Hello and welcome to Insiders, a podcast all about the world of television with me, Peter Fincham.
And me, Jimmy Mulville.
This is a podcast for people who love TV and want to know a bit more about what goes on behind the scenes in show business.
Yes, it is.
So, wow, Jimmy, it's been a big week in the world of American late-night television.
It has, hasn't it?
Jimmy Kimmel is back on ABC, a little
I know.
over a week
I
after the
cheered.
network suspended him over comments about the death of the conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. Did you notice, even on those words I've just said are a controversy? Because on the BBC, Sarah Smith, is it?
Said yes, far right.
She said far right, and then people pile into her and say that that's the wrong way of describing Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
And you think, oh my goodness, we live in a world so divided, but also so alive to semantic distinctions of that sort. I mean, through UK British eyes, Charlie Kirk, if you look at what he did say when he was alive, he looks pretty far right to us.
It was extraordinary that the ABC caved. I thought that taking him off the air was quite a reaction.
But then they decaved, if that's a word, using an expression that I really love and I plan to use in the future, which is that they had thoughtful conversations with Jimmy Kimmel. What exactly is a thoughtful conversation?
Kimmel said, I actually watched the Kimmel monologue. He came back.
This is a comeback monologue.
He came back on Tuesday night. And if you haven't watched it, I suggest you go onto YouTube and watch it. It is brilliant. He is, unlike Trump, he's very statesmanlike.
But that's one thing that occurs to me. I mean, for one thing, here in the UK, we've all talked about Jimmy Kimmel more in the last 2 weeks than we had in the last 10 years, as it were. But do you think it's a shame that there is no equivalent to this in the UK? What I mean is there's no equivalent to the late night talk show. We've talked about this before. Chat shows used to be on all the main channels. Now really it's mostly Graham Norton. And Graham Norton certainly isn't a politically provocative or Graham's a master at at what he does, but he's not there to tweak the nose of the government, as it were. Is it actually something we should regret that in very divisive political times there is no equivalent of these things in the UK to speak?
Have I got news for you?
Well, have I got news for you? And I wasn't making a bleak criticism of have I got news for you.
You were just ignoring it.
Yeah. No, and have I got news for you is a wonderful show.
Thank you.
I'll have to think my way out of this one.
Okay, go on.
It's not fronted.
When you're digging, just make sure you know which way you're facing.
It's not fronted by an equivalent of Jimmy Kimmel. You've got, to analyse have I got news for you, you've got one person with...
do tell me. Let me get a pen and pad. I'm going to write this down.
With one person with political views in his lot and one kind of without in Paul Merton.
Oh, it sounds
and then
good.
you have guest presenters.
Thank you for explaining the format of my own show to me.
That's how it works. But the point I'm making is that it doesn't play this role in political life.
I know what you mean.
Because after all, it's Stephen Colbert before. It's not only Jimmy Kimmel. You have
and Jimmy Fallon and
Jimmy
Seth
Fallon.
Meyers.
You have a running commentary
every night
from late night talk show hosts in America that people have been used to for many, many years, and suddenly in this world becomes intolerable to Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, you're right to say that we don't have them. Culturally, we don't have them. But you were in a position, the BBC and ITV, that you could have actually commissioned a whole range of them.
Yes,
because you've got funny people in this country.
Oh, you absolutely.
Frankie Boyle could have been a very good late night comedian.
You've got funny people. You've got relatively few comedians in recent decades whose shtick is about politics and commenting on political life. I would argue of course there are some, but on the whole, comedians in this country kind of go in a slightly, as I was saying, talk show host Jonathan Ross is not. He's not got anything about politics, or if he has, he's never said it on air, as far as I know. Graham Norton is sort of kind of too well behaved, if you like. Think of the chat show hosts, the great chat show hosts over the years, the Michael Parkinsons and Michael Aspels.
They're cosy, aren't they?
They're cosy. They're not political. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, people have done this, and we did a thing in a talkback called the 11 o'clock show, which was a running three-night night a week running commentary on the world, but it didn't really come from a political place. Now, maybe what this reflects is when you've got a very divided country like the US, you will get comedians more in this area, and maybe in the UK there is a more of a consensus political.
I don't know.
I don't know if that is true.
I don't think there is. I mean, I think that they've just had it forever. But here's what they do: is they mock the people in power. So if you look at Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers 2 years ago, they were mocking Joe Biden. They weren't talking about Donald Trump. They were mocking Joe Biden. And we had this. I had this discussion once with the editorial policy unit at the BBC, that the head of program prevention, and they came to see me because they wanted me to cut out Boris Johnson shouting "Vote Conservative" in 2009 in November. And they said, because we're in a run-up to an election. I said, we're not. The election's in May. And they said, well, we can't have this. You're invoking people to vote Conservatives. I said, but it's clearly a joke. People are laughing at him. Anyway, we did a deal where we cut that bit out, but we left his rant in. And I said, can I ask you why you're so particular about this? He said, well, we've noticed something about Have I Got News For You. And we've noticed this. You do more jokes about Gordon Brown than you do about David Cameron.
This is a very familiar line, isn't it?
Well, first of all, I'm absolutely shocked that you've got somebody in the editorial policy unit who's counting the jokes on Have I Got News For You.
But Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister, presumably.
Well, that's the point. You're absolutely... You've got ahead of me there, because I said, have you noticed that Gordon Brown is the Prime Minister? I said, but don't worry, when we kick his arse out next May and the other idiot gets in, we'll be turning
we'll have a go at him as well.
We'll be turning our guns, because we have a go at the people who make decisions that affect our lives. And every now and again, we'll take a pop at the opposition. But it's about talking truth and being humorous about people in power. That's the point of topical and satirical humor. This incident with Jimmy Kimmel proves that the reason why Donald Trump wants to shut these voices down, he can't take a joke. He cannot take a joke, and he reacts. He's easily riled at every single instance.
And of course, this isn't only late night talk shows, because it's South Park as well. It's anything that makes fun of him.
Yeah, he's got such a thin skin. And what I think this is an interesting moment here is that it's something that a lot of different people can agree on. Ted Cruz, who is very right wing, has come out and said this is a big mistake.
Well, Joe Rogan has,
and Joe Rogan said it, and Mitch McConnell said it.
Yeah.
And so Jimmy Kimmel, he said this is something we can all agree on, that what Donald Trump is doing is actually un-American.
Another thing that kind of amuses me about it is that when Trump goes on the attack, he doesn't actually go on the attack about the content.
No, he's dishonest.
He goes on about the ratings.
I know.
So suddenly the old Apprentice presenter of his comes out. A man is obsessed with ratings and says, well, Jimmy Kimmel hasn't been doing very well in the ratings.
He's got no talent.
So he's got no talent, so that's why they've cancelled him. But it is an extraordinary thing that, and you could say, I guess if you were in America, it shows that television still matters.
Yeah.
Because after all, this is linear television. This is old-fashioned network television. And we often sit here and say, it's all about streaming now. Networks are hanging on by their fingernails. But this suggests that they still play a very important part.
And the news outlets in America yesterday, building up to Jimmy Kimmel's return, it was all about Jimmy Kimmel. And they were saying this is a pivotal moment in American television history. And Jimmy Kimmel makes the point saying, Donald Trump said I got fired because I got low ratings. Well, I haven't now.
Yeah, exactly.
And he said, Donald Trump tried to cancel me, and as a consequence,
his ratings are going through the roof.
My ratings are now going through the roof because people think, well, what is Jimmy Kimmel on about? Let's just start listening to that point of view. And we are lucky that we don't, that we can slag off our politicians at the moment anyway, and they don't have that kind of power to frighten networks into submission. But you do worry, don't you, that Nigel Farage, I'm not saying he's like Donald Trump, he's in the same gene pool, but the truth is he's also got a very thin skin. I remember when Joe Brand made a joke about him, when someone threw some yogurt in his face, Joe Brand said on Have I Got News For You, A shame it wasn't battery acid. Well, the truth is, it's a joke. But he went to the newspapers. He said she should be fired. This is a disgrace. This is inciting violence. And actually, Jimmy Kimmel said, all of us are in this position where he said, I get death threats all the time for the kind of things I say. And he said, what I say is not important. He said, I'm just a tiny, tiny cog in the Disney world. This show is not important. What's important is we live in a country where this show exists.
Yes.
And so his speech, and I really do urge anybody who's listening to go onto YouTube and watch it. It makes your heart jump. You think, God, that's great. He was mature. He was statesmanlike. He teared up on a couple of occasions when he was talking about these issues, and he got big laughs as well at the expense of Donald Trump. So he didn't shy away from Donald Trump. And he makes a big joke about Disney at the end, which I won't spoil, because in my household, I'm called a spoiler. Because I'm the kind of person that says to my kids, you've got to watch Abigail's Party. You'd never see him having a heart attack at the end. All right, I think we're now rambling.
Let's get an envelope. Owen, give me an envelope. You throw it. Okay, the words in the... I can't read your writing.
I know.
Oh, yes, I can. The words in the envelope are RTS heads to Cambridge. So this is about the RTS conference, which has just taken place in Cambridge.
Oh, my God.
I didn't go to... I have been to the RTS in Cambridge before.
I've never been.
Well, I just put a word in for it. Not for the conference, because obviously it's boring as hell, but Cambridge in mid-September. You and I were at Cambridge University, Jim. It's a lovely excuse to go for a walk along the back. So the leaves are starting to turn.
Go to Fitzbilly's for a cake.
Exactly. You get a little bit of nostalgia about it and so on. But then there's a conference. So we talk about a little bit of the headlines from this RTS conference. The PSB's got together. I mean, they really do go to this conference to set out their 5-point plan for the future. And I don't know why you're laughing.
Well, I'm laughing because I'm looking at what they're saying.
I'll read that. So number one, ensuring their content is prominent on digital products like YouTube and on fair commercial terms.
Well, that's interesting. Let's just stop there. What's fair commercial terms?
And is this within their power? This isn't within their power. This is within the power of regulators and a government.
It's so interesting because when we started, it was all about exclusivity. It was a broadcaster would buy the program and be very protective about the exclusivity of it now. But now it's about promiscuity. It's about let's just go and penetrate every single outlet we can.
Yes, that isn't that new, because as soon as Sky came along, the PSBs had a dilemma in a sense. Do we put our programmes on Sky platform, bearing in mind Sky is a rival?
That's the difficult tightrope we're walking, is that as a producer, do you cede those rights of secondary use, which is what the YouTube channel would be? Because normally you get paid for those. I mean, let's just explain something, is that once you make a program and it's paid by the original broadcaster, you then get the rights as the producer to sell it to the secondary market, maybe 6 months or a year or 18 months later. So if you agree
to go on YouTube, you're devaluing those rights.
Because it's there forever.
But if YouTube do indeed kind of create revenue, whether directly by advertising within it or more generally because it's adding to the offering of YouTube. But the BBC say, oh, no, we've got to keep our kind of our kind of virginity here. You can't give any income. Isn't that just a straightforward win for YouTube, for which they haven't had to invest a single penny?
And also, I think it's the beginning of a conversation the BBC are going to have with itself about once they put it on a different platform. For example, when we put Have I Got News For You on UK TV, it has adverts.
Yes. So so maybe that kind of difficult conversation has happened and they've found a solution to it.
The truth is that it's good. I think it's great that the BBC are thinking, how do we increase our audiences by embracing, it's not new technology now, it's been around for 20 years, but the old empire are now having to wake up to the fact that there are new kids on the block. And I think that's a good thing. But as producers, as you know, we make revenue, important revenue, which means we can exist as independent producers from selling these very important rights for value. So what's the value? So you're saying, well, they're going to argue, which they are, it's going to increase your possibility of getting a recommission because we're going to get a good audience. And that's a valid point of view. My argument would be, yes, but why can't you relax these rules now and embrace the future and say some of our content will end up on a commercial platform like YouTube where you can sell advertising, because that's not the BBC, that's YouTube.
Okay, well, look, we got 5 of these points,
Okay.
points to be planned for the future. So let's keep trotting through. The number 2, ensuring trusted, independent journalism thrives.
Well, we've just been talking about that. I think
That's like saying
here.
world peace, please, or a cure for cancer.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to disagree with that.
Yeah.
Continue to invest in UK storytelling, whether that means tax credits, funding for the BBC, or supportive and proportionate regulation for ITV, STV, Channel 4 and Channel 5.
Oh, blimey.
That's a bit of a mouthful.
Bit of a mouthful, isn't it? And a bit woolly.
It takes a bit of a handbrake turn, because continuing to invest in UK storytelling sounds kind of like a noble aim, whether that means tax credits or for other funding thing suddenly takes it down to the world.
When I hear UK storytelling,
commercial stuff.
I'm hearing cheaper drama.
Well,
no, I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. Otherwise, I would have said fucking cheaper drama. But what I'm saying is that it's. I think that is sensible. I think if the BBC and ITV and Channel 5 do it rather brilliantly, actually. I think they do say to producers, look, this is the money. Can you make it for that? If not, fine. So it's a proposition. You have to cut your cloth accordingly.
But the hard stuff here is the tax breaks. And apparently Carolyn McCall, who's arguing for expanded tax breaks regime, says it's a no-brainer. She says she discussed it with Rachel Reeves at ITV's recent 70th birthday drinks party, and the Chancellor is very receptive to the idea. Now, when you go to a drinks party and bring up some subject that matters enormously to you with somebody like Rachel Reeves, whose entire life consists of people lobbying her for tax breaks and so on and so forth, I wouldn't call it a banked promise that Rachel apparently was very receptive to the idea.
But she argued that the 40% film tax break for films under 15 million has actually transformed that part of the business. I mean, that's a significant tax break, and it should be replicated with lower budget shows. For example, as we now know, you get 25% tax break for $1 million plus an hour. And what we're arguing now is that maybe the tax break should be for lower budget dramas and comedies.
The £1 million is very arbitrary, isn't it?
It would be transformational. If you could have tax breaks for lower cost comedies, you'd have more comedies on the air, and that would be a good thing.
But explain to me, because one of the points that Carolyn McCall was making was that around 25% of British dramas are shot overseas, places like Hungary and Budapest or Ireland or whatever, because they're offering more attractive tax environments. So the tax break for anything over £1 million sounds like quite an attractive tax break. What is Carolyn McCall arguing for there, and what is it that Ireland, and you may know this from all the drama that you do, places like Canada, I know you've been shooting in recently, what is it that they offer that we don't offer in the UK that we could get more production to be in the UK if we did?
Well, I think the argument is that we should make it easier for lower cost drama, and by association comedy, because it's half hour, that they should also come in. They should enjoy some form of tax break to make it easier to make that kind of drama. In Canada, you can get up to 35%, and I'm not sure about what you get in Ireland, but it's a very, very good tax break. Hungary is interesting because we made a show in Hungary where there's tax break, but it's the costs of making it are cheaper, and that's why a lot of American shows are shot here because we did something with Disney and they insist on it being in a country with a tax break, which means that they often do it in Canada. A lot of American shows are shot, and we're now shooting Jed Mercurio's new shows being shot in Vancouver because of that, for that reason.
Isn't there a contradiction here that I genuinely don't understand? On the one hand, we note that so much American production is shot in the UK because of our attractive tax breaks, which aren't replicated, say, in California. So I've got a feeling this is a thing that Donald Trump banged on about, let's get Hollywood back to Hollywood or whatever. So on the one hand, that says the UK is doing the right thing. On the other hand, what we're hearing here is that 25% of British dramas are being shot overseas. So that seems to tug in the other direction. Is that because, and I know I've shot things in Budapest, been to Budapest. Is that because, I'm just using Hungary as one example, is that because it is simply cheaper to make them there?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And, it's a bit like, or certainly when we made it, it was a bit like the Wild West. And we were doing a show with Matt Lucas, and I was out there, and I said to Matt, "Are you enjoying it in Hungary?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Actually, compared to Romania, which I made a B movie a few years back, in Romania," he said, "we were doing a kind of horror movie, and they couldn't get the crows in the graveyard scene, to alight on the cadavers that were scattered around. So we broke for lunch, and we came back.
Some dead people.
And
then the crows came.
No, and the crows then, he said, we came back from lunch, and the crows were actually on the bodies, squawking away, craw, craw, craw. And they were brilliant there because they just were on the bodies. And then we discovered that the crew had stapled their feet to the bodies. So they don't mess around in Romania.
Right.
No animals were harmed in the making of this film. Does not appear on the credits.
Let's get back to the PSB's 5-point plan for the future.
Okay, no, because it's fascinating. I've managed to stay awake throughout the whole thing.
Number 4.
Yeah.
A managed transition to our TV future.
What the fuck is that?
No. Government and industry should prepare now for a switch over to internet-delivered television, which requires a clear commitment from ministers. I mean, those are...
So let's paint the
slightly
picture.
meaningless words here, aren't they?
They're not even that meaningful to be. They're not even... whatever's below meaningless,
Yes.
That is what it is. Because what does that mean? On a certain night, Tim Davie will have his hand on a switch
Exactly.
and pull the switch down, and we'll all be watching on our computers and iPads, except some poor old woman in Swindon who's
got
still
TV
trying to watch
aerial.
telly.
Exactly.
And suddenly her telly goes black. And then the Daily Mail will swoop in saying, thousands of old age pensioners is left in the dark.
Exactly.
So how do they manage the transition to our TV future?
Because surely all broadcasters are preparing for this transition.
It's gradual,
This
isn't it?
transition's it's been going on for a long time. It's going to keep going on until that old lady in Swindon has finally got kind of high-speed broadband. Then she can watch telly that way as well. So I don't really know what that means. It sounds like a perfectly good intention, but as you say, it's a continuous process. It's been going on for a long time and will continue to.
Yeah. So
we'll quickly get the number, the fifth one
but it
out
is
here.
something you say at something as tedious as the RTS Cambridge Conference.
We don't know if it was tedious because we weren't there. So
I don't need to be there to have an opinion about it.
Over a barrel of laughs.
Have you not noticed? I don't need to have experienced something to have an opinion about it.
And the fifth one, recognising the importance of working together to compete globally, remove, and in inverted commas, removing unnecessary barriers so that public service broadcasters can form strategic partnerships with each other as well as non-PSBs.
Well, good luck with that.
What are those barriers? I don't think there are any barriers there at all. They just don't.
Corporate ego.
Yeah, exactly. When I was at the BBC, I can remember, we were so committed. If you like, it's like the Cold War of the days. So the BBC versus ITV was a kind of war that you fought to win in the ratings. You never stopped to think, does this war even need to happen? And then when I got to the ITV, it was exactly the same in reverse, except ITV had the view that the BBC weren't very good partners. You couldn't make a partnership with the BBC. They weren't realistic about, they didn't understand how a commercial organisation needed to operate. So I'm sure there are historic legacy reasons why PSBs find it difficult to kind of, if you like, come together into partnerships. But I don't think. What are the barriers? I don't think there's any barriers. I think corporate ego is a very good way of putting it.
I think it's corporate ego, and I think and we talked about it on a podcast a while ago about the Royal Family documentary where they actually had it. They both had it.
Yes.
The BBC broadcast it, and ITV broadcast it, and they shared because there was a shared.
Well, and they do
national moment.
They still do it with World Cup finals and
with
things like
sport.
that.
They do it, and I'm thinking it would solve problems around drama.
Yeah,
is that something? If they got together and they had a department which could do co-productions between BBC, ITV or Channel 4, and then they all broadcast it, people who watch things naturally on the BBC will watch it on the BBC. People who are ITV households, like mine was in Liverpool in the 1960s, we'd have ITV on. That's what would happen.
I've got to point out, because I obviously have seen this from ITV's point of view. There is a flaw to that, because and the flaw is seen whenever you have a big national event like a royal wedding or something, or you have a World Cup final or a Euros final. If you have something simultaneously on both channels, people will overwhelmingly watch it on the BBC, partly for because BBC is the national broadcasters.
Well, even a popular drama.
Yeah, I think they would, because adverts. If you've got a choice between watching something with ad breaks and not, you will watch something without ad breaks. But ITV can't do a popular drama without ad breaks, or else they don't make any money. So I think there's a problem there. But having said that, the notion of the PSBs being less, if you like, focusing on what divides them, the rivalry between them, and focusing more on what unites them, is a good idea. And I remember saying this when I was at the PSBs and saying we're members of a very small club. We've got quite a lot in common. And the threats that are coming our way, from Netflix and these were earlier days of the streamers, but they were looking pretty powerful as they kind of came over the horizon, should get us to kind of, unite a bit more. Whereas traditionally we have just regarded each other purely and simply as rivals.
Well, and if they do that, and then if they're also, forced by sheer dint of just trying to reach audiences of putting their content on YouTube, Lisa Nandy has actually come out and said that she says as video viewing, she quaintly calls it, moves away from broadcasters' own services and towards third-party platforms, i.e.
which YouTube basically means.
We support Ofcom's recommendation that public service media content should be prominent on major video sharing platforms, YouTube, and on fair commercial terms. And then she says, if we need to regulate, we will. How will she do that?
Well, it's a very good question. So how do you say to YouTube, when you search YouTube or open your YouTube app or whatever, that the first thing you see is BBC One before you get to anything else? I would have thought on the face of it, if you approach YouTube to say, we think that's a good idea, they would think that's the most peculiar request to make.
So remind me, BBC?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's move on to another. We got one more envelope today, haven't we?
Oh my God, we've got
I think it's coming your way this time.
Okay, what can it be? Thank you, Owen. Very nice. It's a nice dress you're wearing. Right. Oh, I can hardly read. I'm so excited. Happy birthday, Corrie. Happy birthday, Thunderbirds. Happy birthday, Cracker. Happy birthday. Well, we know what this is. Happy birthday, Downton. This is happy birthday, ITV.
Yes.
It was 70. On Tuesday this week. It was 70 years old, Peter.
It's not that dissimilar in age to you and me, Jim.
Well,
it has to be said.
It got going on September the 22nd, 1955. I was 9 months old.
Right, I was unborn.
I wasn't allowed to stay up to watch it.
They did a big thing a couple of weeks ago, a big gala thing, which I have to say I was invited to and I wasn't able to get to.
You weren't able or chose not to go?
It would have been very tight. I was just flying in from somewhere and I just couldn't quite make it or whatever.
You couldn't quite be bothered.
Well, there's another going to be bothered isn't right, but I had misgivings about being what you might call the ghost of Christmas past. When you leave those organisations, whether it's the BBC or ITV, the waters close over you very quickly.
Yeah,
and
they paint out your name on the parking lot.
Believe me, there's no trace of you. It's not like being at school where if you were
you're always welcome back.
No, I don't mean that. But if you were the captain of the first 11 at football, there will be a varnished board somewhere in which they've. It's true of my school, Jim. I don't know where you come from, but there will be a varnished board.
A varnished board. You are lucky.
They'll paint in P. Fincham, captain of cricket 1973 or whatever.
Yeah.
That does not happen at the BBC or ITV.
No.
Exactly as you say. When you leave, you might as well never have existed. And new people come in and take over your jobs or similar jobs. And it's all, as it ought to be, it's all about the present and all about the future. And I guess I would say temperamentally, I'm not somebody who really is interested in the past and what happened before. So I didn't want to, I wasn't really very keen to go back. But ITV turning 70 is a moment, although another thing, theory of anniversaries. Because when you run a channel, people are throwing anniversaries at you all the time.
Yeah. So
it would be quite interesting to do a pecking order of anniversaries. 50th is a big anniversary.
Yeah.
Arguably 75 is a bigger one than 70. Anniversaries like 40 and 30 They're sort of quite interesting.
Yeah.
25's good. 20's not quite so good.
Yeah.
100 will be brilliant when you get to 100. So,
Peter,
yeah.
do you have enough to do? Because I've never thought this deeply about birthdays.
No,
Do you
you
sit
never
in the
run a
bar
channel. You never run a
thinking,
channel where people come up and say, it's the 18th anniversary of the launch of Cold Feet. I think we should do a special. You say,
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck about the 18th anniversary. Come back in 2 years'
Yeah.
time, or maybe in 7 years' time,
Yeah.
when we reach the quarter century. No, I'm simply saying that anniversaries have a pecking order.
but when it
And I'm
launched,
saying 70 isn't that interesting.
all right, well, point taken. I think we'll move on. When it did launch, though, it
Yes,
was
yes,
quite
yes.
a moment. The
It's a hell of a
BBC famously
They
didn't
tried to strangle it at birth.
They did.
Yeah.
Uh,
They killed off the character in the Archers.
I think this is. I've always loved this
This
story.
is the Joan of Arc thing. They basically burned her to death. There's
Yes.
a character called Grace Archer.
Grace, and she's a very popular figure.
Yes.
And apparently, because radio in those days was also pretty popular, it had 20 million listeners. You had people queuing up outside the BBC to pay their condolences.
Yes.
I mean, it was a big national moment, but it didn't thwart ITV. On the opening night, they actually had a play called Opening Night, which was a live TV drama about the opening night of a theatre. It was like a very meta thing to do an hour-long play on the opening night. And then, of course, I think the great cultural change was the advent of the advert. People apparently were more fascinated by some of the adverts than the programs. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, these kind of little films.
Yeah, and I think if you're from our generation, you know, somewhere deep in your consciousness are the adverts of your upbringing, you know, and some of the jingles and tunes.
I was fascinated, but you're right. We would remember things like "Nice One, Cyril."
Yes.
Nice One, Cyril.
1001 cleans a big carpet for less than half a crown. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and they used to get little funny sketches like Leonard Rossiter, the famous comedian of the day, tipping his Cinzano over Joan Collins. You'd look forward to them.
I'll give you another one. There are two men in my life. To one I am a mother, to the other I'm a wife, and they both eat shredded wheat. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think.
Were you a shredded wheat household?
Don't know. No, we couldn't afford shredded wheat.
Oh, no.
We used to eat the cardboard.
When we'd finished our packet of shredded wheat, we had the box sent to people in Liverpool.
Thank you.
You know, for
it was you. Well, that kept me alive for many years. The box. I used to nibble the box on the way to school. I say school, but it launched this industry of commercial making, the advertising industry. It spawned amazing careers. Ridley Scott,
yes,
did the very famous Hovis Boy, where that the wonderful tune, now I've forgotten now.
Well, it's the New World Symphony by Dvorak, and it's the slow movement of it.
You're listening to Radio 3.
It's got nothing to do with brown bread.
No, but it elevated it.
Yes.
And it was beautifully shot.
Well, like Bach's Air on a G
And they managed to get
which
big stars.
for a whole generation basically makes you think of a Hamlet cigar.
Yeah. But Alan Parker went on to do Bugsy Malone and all those great films. He started as a Jonathan Glazer more recently.
Of course, all that is true. I'm not doubting it's true at all.
It is true, Peter. The BBC have verified it. Peter Cook and Dudley Moore did a whole run of Guinness ads.
Did they really?
Yes.
I don't remember that.
Yes. So they were like mini programs in between the programs, and people would joke saying, "I only watch ITV for the adverts." We had ITV on in the corner of the room, no matter what was on, and every now and again we go to the BBC for Porridge or Till Death Us Do Part or something like that. But mainly we were in northern England,
and we were the opposite. You won't be surprised to hear. And in fact, if we watched a really good program on ITV, after about 10 minutes, my dad would turn to me and say, "This is on ITV, you know."
Yeah.
As if it was a great surprise that they can make a good program.
And sometimes people will get confused because they would think, "That's such a good program. It must be on the BBC."
Oh God, that's gone on very recently. Downton Abbey, which is we haven't talked about Downton Abbey really, but they've just finished Downton Abbey with the final movie of. I got invited to that premiere, by the way, but I wasn't able to go to that. But But
You're picky, aren't you? You're very picky about where you.
I don't want to live in the past, but
it's also late at night, and you want to get to bed early.
Exactly. But when I was at ITV in Downton Abbey, it was our biggest drama. It was huge. And of course, it was enormous around the world. We would do kind of research on it about attribution, as it's called. And you'd find that an alarmingly high percentage of the audience thought it was on the BBC, just because of the sort of thing that it was. Because your assumption is, period drama, kind of lords and ladies and everything. That's a BBC world. But I suppose, just going back to the birth of ITV, ITV is still profitable. It's still there. It's got a plan for the future. Good luck to it. Good luck to Carolyn McCall. But that 70-year lifespan, if it was ending tomorrow, that's still an amazing story.
Yeah, I mean,
amazing story.
I just question whether whether you and I will be here, indeed, but whether,
ITV will outlive us. Jim.
Will we celebrate its 75th, its 80th?
Well, I was thinking 75. Can I come back to the pecking order of anniversary? 75.
Oh, yes. Let's revisit that, because that was, I'm sure
75 is a bigger deal than 70.
Yes.
So I think if they invite me to their 75th birthday gala
You'll
event,
get someone to take you, will you?
I'll try to get along.
All right. So anyway, happy birthday, ITV. Well done.
That's all for this week. Thanks very much for listening. Any questions about the world of television you've always wanted to ask, send them our way. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, you can get them in the usual way on our socials, or just email us, or even better, why don't you watch our YouTube and subscribe to that?
And if you've enjoyed the show, do please follow Insiders the TV podcast wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for listening.